Despite the sluggish global economy, Africa has recorded a high annual average growth rate of 5% for the past 10 years and is poised to become the world's next growth engine. The continent, comprised of 54 countries, accounts for more than one-fourth of the member states of the United Nations and plays an indispensable role in international affairs. In January last year, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea opened the Korea Africa Center to promote cooperation and exchange with Africa. The center is headed by Kim Il-soo, who has served as the Minister of the Korean Embassy in the United Kingdom and Ambassador to the Kazakhstan and Israel since joining the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1977. On today's The Interview, we meet Kim Il-soo, the Director of the Korea Africa Center. Joining us today is Kim Il-soo, the Director of the Korea Africa Center, Korea's first institution specializing in research on Africa. We'll delve into Africa's diverse culture and arts industries and discuss the cooperation measures between Korea and Africa for development. Mr. Kim, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you. I feel like this interview comes at a very opportune moment because everyone seems to be very focused on Africa. Mm-hmm. It's the rising continent. It's shown remarkable growth in the past 10 years. But for our viewers, can you give us just some general background information on Africa?
First of all, what I like to emphasize is that Africa is the continent of diversity. Mm-hmm. For long, Africa is known as a difficult, dangerous, or very distant continent.
Indeed.
But actually, it is a continent of 54 countries, each of which present its own opportunities.
Okay.
And recently, as we mentioned, Africa registered the fastest economic growth in the world, and it is emerging also not only as a source of labor because of its demographic situation, but also middle class is emerging with the purchasing power. So Africa is becoming also important as a market.
Right.
And what I'd like to add is, unlike in the past, good governance is now prevailing in Africa. So change of government by election has become a rule rather than an exception. So it makes us view Africa's future in a more optimistic way.
Okay, so there's lots of growth opportunities going forward as well as consumers and producers, which we'll be going into further on in the episode. But for now, to help people better understand Africa and its diverse cultures and traditions, the Seoul Africa Festival was held at Cheonggye Square in April. So let's take a look at the footage before we continue with our talk. The Seoul Africa Festival was held in Cheonggye Plaza in April to help Koreans better understand Africa and its culture. A thematic booth was set up for each participating country. There are also booths where participants could try on traditional costumes, learn African-style hair braiding. It helped break down the cultural barrier by offering participants a chance to gain a first-hand experience of African culture.
일반인들이 가지고 있는 어떤 아프리카에 대한 어떤 왜곡된 시각들 이런 것들을 조금 이제 개선한 부분인데 우리가 그 TV에서만 보던 그런 아프리카가 아니라 조금 더 아프리카 현장에 마치 가 있어서 우리가 좀 볼 수 있었던 것처럼 여기서 좀 그런 장의 기회를 좀 제공하려고 이런 자리를 갖게 됐습니다.
So I think the festival helped to introduce Koreans to Africa's very diverse culture and arts, such as the cuisine, the music, the art.
What would you say are the most representative cultural characteristics of, I know Africa is very diverse, but of Africa as a whole?
Yes, we usually don't associate Africa with culture and civilization. It's a result of our stereotype conception, but actually it is the continent where all the civilization of Egypt comes from,
Right.
and also Ethiopia used to be a great empire, and we also have other kingdoms in the southern and western part of Africa,
Yeah.
Asante, Shona, and others.
Okay.
So because of this old history and tradition, it is a very diverse culture. And it is artistic form is quite characterized, I think, by intertwinedness between art and life. So art is not just a separate activity, but it's a way of life for Africans.
Okay.
And also all art forms like music, dance, painting, sculpture, everything, they go together.
Hand in hand.
It's a kind of comprehensive effect because it is their way of life.
Right.
These art forms are not the separate genres, but they all go together. So I think that characterizes the African art.
Okay, so it incorporates all aspects of their daily lives.
Yes, life is art, art is life.
Indeed, indeed. Good, very, very good quote indeed. And the Korea Africa Center had a booth at this festival. What kind of things did you have on display there?
Of course, we are a young organization, so our purpose to being there was to let our existence known,
Okay.
and also have people understand what we are doing, which is, as we mentioned, research on Africa,
Yeah.
and also organizing various events and others to promote understanding and exchanges. And of course, I was quite surprised to find so many NGOs and organizations involved with Africa, and we went there also to kind of networking with
Right.
other NGOs, and so it was both very productive and
Yeah.
also enjoyable.
Okay, and do you think people were quite open to, the culture and arts of Africa?
Oh yes, because African culture and art is quite new in Korea, so naturally people get attracted
Yeah.
to what we displayed, and many African embassies also participated to present what they have to the Korean general public.
Okay.
So I think it's very useful, and this kind of events I hope will be organized more often.
I hope to see that too. Because in the past, Africa has been more known for its negative aspects. You mentioned the political conflicts before, but also the poverty, the poor sanitation, illnesses and epidemics. And I think the average person just has this vague notion of tribal communities and exotic animals, and that's the extent of their knowledge. So what do you think needs to happen in order for people to change their views of Africa?
Yes, indeed. Africa has been a victim of this wrong stereotype that reflects the past of Africa.
Right.
But as I mentioned, the continent is changing, and one of the purposes of our center is to get rid of that kind of stereotype
Right.
about Africa. And in order to do so, what we can do is to let Africa better known and more known to people. So because the lack of knowledge is the source of wrong perception. So our job is to close the knowledge gap. We are doing everything available to let Africa known properly.
Okay.
So as it is.
Right. So talking about culture and music specifically, I hear there's a place in Korea where you can experience African music and art. And the Innerview crew went to go and check it out. So let's take a look at this video clip.
At a small theatre in Mapogu, Seoul, a workshop was hosted by African culture and arts organization called Kulekan, which means the cry of the roots in the language of Burkina Faso.
Pourquoi j'ai fait ce cours de danse? Parce que les Coréens ne connaissent pas la danse africaine. Donc je vais les faire comprendre qu'est-ce que la danse africaine et la musique africaine. Donc c'est pour cela que j'ai organisé ce cours de danse. Now, it has to be not two. Okay? We try to. Okay. It's like tac, tac, tac. Again, just one foot. And we repeat. 1, 2, 3, 8. Tac, tac, tac.
West African dance is characterized by energetic and dynamic moves that involve using the entire body.
La musique africaine et la danse africaine, pour moi, c'est vraiment unique. Pourquoi c'est unique? C'est quelque chose qui appelle les gens de venir rester ensemble. Si en Afrique, si on joue la musique, on ne connaît pas ce qui est pauvre, ce qui est riche, ce qui est malade, tout le monde est ensemble.
The participants quickly became enticed by Emmanuel's electrifying dance performances that show the sense of African dance. Amidou led by singing to the traditional djembe rhythm, and the students repeated the lyrics while dancing.
아프리카 문화에 대해서 너무 관심이 많았는데 이번 기회를 통해서 아프리카 문화를 몸소 배울 수 있어서 너무 좋은 것 같습니다.
공연 보니까 춤 너무 배워보고 싶다는 생각 들었었는데 이제 진짜 배워보니까 처음 기대했던 만큼 재밌고 스트레스도 풀리고 그랬었던 것 같아요.
At a gallery in Cheonggye, Seoul, there was a solo exhibition by Tanzanian artist Hendrik Lilanga, who created the Lilanga style. Hendrik Lilanga's works depicting happy African families are set to be featured in a Korean elementary school textbook.
누군가에 대한 배려, 상대에 대한 배려, 그것이 결국은 휴머니티의 원형이라고 할 수 있다는 것이죠. 그런 측면이 이제 아프리카 미술이나 조각에서 굉장히 많이 보이기 때문에 우리 한국 사회도 여러모로 힘들지만 힘든 가운데서도 마음의 부자됨을 좀 널리 이 그림과 조각을 통해서 알리기 위해서 저희가 미술관을 열게 됐습니다.
How did the visitors feel looking at the paintings of Tanzanian people who do not lose hope even in difficult and dire situations?
평소에 아프리카 문화에 대해서 접할 기회가 없는데 이렇게 아프리카 문화에 대해서 이제 간접적으로 접하니까 아프리카 문화를 좀 이해할 기회도 있는 것 같고
평소에 많이 보던 이제 다른 그림들보다 배경을 강하게 사용해서 약간 산만한 느낌이 있는 것 같지만 그것 때문에 좀 요소들이 재밌게 부각이 되는 것 같고요.
설명을 통해서 그 작품의 이야기를 듣다 보니까 아프리카 사람들이 얼마나 긍정적으로 사는지 그런 것들을 간접적으로 체험할 수 있어서 굉장히 기분도 좋고 또 많이 본받고 싶었던 그런 전시였습니다.
So it might be because I'm not too familiar with African music or culture or arts, but it seems very different, very exotic. What would you say is the biggest appeal of African culture?
I think it is spontaneity and improvisation.
Okay.
And in case of music, there is a kind of a polyrhythm. I mean, it's not restricted to a particular pattern, but doing it just as they like, musicians like, in a more spontaneous way.
Right.
So we see the example of jazz, which is the product of African Americans, of course.
Indeed.
But the combination of Western music and African spirit, I would say. So that become very popular and all over the world. So I think African music, it has the universal appeal.
Okay.
We enjoy it for as some exotic form of art, but it has this universal appeal.
Right.
And fine art is concerned, it is known that Picasso got his inspiration from African color and culture. So,
oh, is that so?
Yes, so that's what I heard. And so it is become a source of new inspiration.
Right.
And but now Africans are expressing themselves not through the third party, but they themselves.
Right, directly.
So that's, quite an important change.
Yeah. And I think what I got out of it was that they seem to be very free. And perhaps that's from their lifestyle. And as you said, art comes out of your life and your traditions. And I guess that's what resonates with the public and why it's so appealing.
Right.
But there aren't many organizations or institutions specializing in African culture, and there aren't many opportunities to experience it. So are there any places that you can recommend for people who do want to experience African culture?
Yes, actually, if you seriously look around, there are quite many opportunities to enjoy the African culture. And one of my senior ambassador, he opened the African Museum in Yongwol.
Okay.
And if you go there, you can enjoy, especially the artifacts from western part of Africa.
Right.
And we have another African museum in Jeju Island. And there are quite a few musicians who write and sing their songs on the theme of Africa.
Okay.
So a few days ago, we organized the Africa Day.
In Korea?
With the foreign minister and the chairman of the Korea Federation of Business.
Okay.
And in the presence of African ambassadors, and we invited one of the music groups in Korea,
right,
specializing their music in Africa.
Interesting.
So if you look around, there are quite many.
Okay, so it's there to experience if you're looking for it. And hopefully with the help of the Korea Africa Center, we will be more exposed to it.
And one thing I'd like to add is that we have a KOICA program, and currently in Africa we have around 500 or 600 young Koreans.
Oh, really?
Doing their volunteer work, and we have done it quite many years.
Right.
So the number of young people who have experience in Africa are quite many.
Right, lots of things going on then. And in 2015, more than a dozen African countries, including Kenya and Ethiopia, joined the African Forest Landscape Restoration Initiative, the AFR 100. And the objective of that initiative, as I understand it, is to restore 100 million hectares of land in Africa by 2030. I believe it's a country-led effort. Could you explain for us further what the initiative's about?
Yes, now we have climate change international conference going on, and we are talking about the impact climate change would have on various parts of the world.
Yeah.
And Africa is would be one of the most influenced by the climate change. And at the moment, eastern and southern part of Africa is suffering from drought,
right,
and maybe caused by the El Nino. So the restoration of the forest is one of the many things we can do to minimize the effect of climate change on African countries. And also the Saharan desert is now expanding, and the desertification is going on.
I see.
So forestation, of course, is the best way to hold that kind of climate, the changes which may adversely affect the climate.
Okay.
So many African countries joined the initiative to do the restoration of the forest.
Okay. Now, on the other hand, there are many beautiful places in Africa as well, with very well-preserved natural environments. And I believe many places have made it onto the UNESCO World Natural Heritage List. I understand you've been to many countries in Africa, obviously. Where would you recommend to go? And that's also safe for our viewers to travel in if they want to.
I told you that Africa is a continent of diversity.
Of course,
and
yeah.
this diversity of climate too, and also topography.
Right.
So eastern part of Africa mostly is the Great Rift Valley area, and high places
Right.
and lakes. So generally, climate is quite moderate and not very difficult to travel.
Right.
And the southern part of Africa as well. We recently saw the program. Via cable TV, the people visiting Namibia. Namibia is also a beautiful place.
Right.
And Botswana. Botswana is the location where they shoot the wildlife programs.
Right, all those documentaries.
So there are quite many places and where I recommend to visit.
Okay.
So as far as safety is concerned, there is a so-called Global Security Index. And Korea is, of course, a safer country than the others.
Yeah.
But in Africa, there are quite a few countries safer than Korea.
Really?
Yes, it's Namibia, Botswana, for example.
Okay.
And Ghana, Gambia, Senegal, and other countries, they are on par with Korea.
Okay, interesting. Now, one thing I wasn't aware of is that Africa is gaining ground in the fashion industry.
Oh, yes.
And I understand African fashion designers are creating quite the buzz in the fashion community, and that there are a growing number of global companies who are officially sponsoring the fashion weeks in Africa. Now, I found that quite surprising because, Africa, as I said before, even though it may be a misconception, it's known for perhaps the more negative aspects. How did it manage to become the new fashion hub?
I think a new trend we witness in Africa is the ownership. When they talk about economic development, they now understand economic development cannot be achieved by the help of others or by others, but Africans themselves.
Okay.
And the same thing happens in the area of arts. So as I mentioned, they express themselves not through somebody else, but they themselves. And I think this kind of trend is becoming more viable and in fashion.
Okay.
So the American sense of art is turning into viable business. So that's really what happens in Africa. So that's the area also Korean and African designers work together.
Right.
For example, Korean national dress, hanbok.
Yes.
We introduced that idea to them to African designers too.
Oh, wow.
And they combine the concept of hanbok with their African pattern. So experimental,
Wow.
but they told us that they will try.
Very imaginative. Very artistic indeed. And also, in addition to the growing prominence in the global fashion industry, Africa has become the new rising producer of textiles, I hear. And due to this trend, a lot of African countries are also making efforts to attract foreign investors in order to bolster economic growth through the textile industry. Now, I believe the USA also enacted the African Growth and Opportunity Act in 2000 to promote its trade relations with Africa. Can you give us more specifics about that act?
Yes, the development of Africa is the very important issue in the international community, and the United States led the international community by introducing this act to promote African manufacturing.
Yeah.
So and other industry too. So exempting tariff or lowering tariff for the goods originating in Africa, they help promote the industries in Africa. So one of the benefactors of that policy is the Chinese companies.
Right.
They are operating in Africa and produce the textile products, and many of them are exported to the United States.
I see.
So that's one of the advantages we may enjoy when we change our production base to Africa.
Okay, so that makes me wonder about the Korean textile industry then. I heard that the Korea Federation of Textile Industry and the African Cotton and Textile Industries Federation signed an MOU to create this bilateral textile industry cooperation network. Could you give us more details on that?
I happened to meet the chairman of the Korean Federation of Textile Industry, and he told me that he visited Africa recently and see the perspective of doing business there.
Okay.
And so I think the Korean textile industry also has some chance in making success in Africa. And because the Chinese are doing it first, maybe we are watching it closely, and also just putting together the advantages we have. We can also think about, doing some operation in Africa.
Okay. So looking for growth opportunities.
Yes, the MOU I think is concerned about that kind of possibility.
And of course, one of the main industries in Africa is the coffee industry. Africa's coffee industry accounts for about 12% of global production. It still lags a little bit behind South Africa in terms of the blending and the quality management strategies. But I hear that recently, with its growing economy, it's gone into processing and even consuming coffee as well.
Yes, the Ethiopia is an interesting country in that sense because Ethiopia is the origin of coffee.
Right.
So coffee originated there, and they have an interesting coffee ceremony and so on.
Okay.
African coffee has its quality and also small amounts and the rarity.
So, I see. Can you hike up the price
yes,
then?
so I think branding is the key to the success of African coffee industry.
Okay.
And I heard there are a few cases, the foreign investors, they made some business in Africa, branding the coffee.
Okay.
So I think that's what African coffee producing countries may do. And by the way, our center, we printed a book titled Coffee Producing Countries in Africa.
Okay,
so
good.
because it contains pictures of 5 Eastern African countries, and so kind of a tourism guide, but also at the same time introducing coffee farm in plantation in East Africa.
All right. Africa then is generally regarded as a foreign aid recipient, having historically received a lot of aid to counter the issues of poverty and sanitation, all these things we've talked about. But since the turn of the new millennium, it's quickly turned into the new growth engine for the global economy. Can you tell us more about the trends in growth and development in Africa right now?
Yes, up until 2003, Africa was considered a kind of a hopeless continent. That's what the economists reported about Africa. But economists changed its view in 2011 by stating that Africa is a continent on the rise. And 1 year before that, McKinsey, they produced a report on Africa and titled Lions on the Move.
Right.
So it means African countries registered higher growth rate than other countries, even faster than Asia.
Yeah.
And but what makes this new phenomenon more important, significant, is that economic growth is registered not by oil-producing countries or commodity-based economies, but the countries with good governance. So Ethiopia, for example, doesn't have oil, gas, but it's still register higher economic growth rate than the other countries.
Right.
That's because of a good government and maybe developmental state.
Yeah.
I don't say it is a particularly democratic, but the country is really determined to change their economy with their coordinated macroeconomic policy.
Right. So good governance is the base of a lot of growth, particularly in East Africa, where they don't really have many natural resources.
That's right.
Okay. Interesting. And a lot of countries throughout the world, including the US, China, Japan, they're putting a lot of investment into Africa right now and pursuing more active relations with them. What's the current situation between Korea and Africa in terms of relations?
Our relations with Africa is have a long history, but both trade and investment, we have quite much room for improvement. And because trade or investment we do with Africa counts a little bit more than 1% of our total trade and investment. So it is too little. And so there are much room for improvement, much to be desired. And so that's what our this center is now want to change.
Change, yeah.
Yes. So compared to the potential Africa is presenting to us, actual activities we are doing with Africa is remains at the minimal level. And how to, expand it.
Yeah, that's your
and,
objective.
Let the potential of African countries and Korea to full effect is our task.
Okay. And thinking about it the other way around, Korea's popular culture and music, it's obviously already very popular around the world. It's referred to as Hallyu or the Korean wave. Has the Korean wave hit Africa yet? Is K-pop and K-dramas popular in Africa?
I think so, but it is not as much known as K-pop hitting Europe and North America. But I heard some Korean dramas are quite popular in Africa. And K-pop, it is just a trend. It's a borderless and quite natural that many African youth are interested in K-pop.
And there are a lot of Korean enterprises trying to expand into Africa, of course. But I think it's important for them to understand the differences, the political and economic differences, and also the differences in culture and social traditions as well. So do you have any words of advice for Korean enterprises looking to expand into Africa?
Sometimes we consider Africa as a one country.
But it's not
Africa,
one size
but
fits
there is
all.
nothing like Africa.
Right.
It's a diverse 54 countries. Each country has its own situation and own opportunities and risks. And at the same time, I would like to say we have to see the risk side and the opportunity side on a balanced way. So far, we looked too much on the risk side. But we have to view it in a more balanced way. Then we can see the chances in Africa. And the other thing is it is a little bit mid and long-term business. So we cannot get instant results from our, for example, investment in Africa. It takes time. So we have to be a little bit patient. And Africa, some countries are corrupt, but most of countries, they are becoming less corrupt. And their legal condition is also very important. So we shouldn't consider Africa a lawless continent. They have their own law, and in order to do your business properly, you have to know the law and the legal conditions. So that kind of advice I may
So know the country that you're going into. Africa is not just one size fits all. You have to have a custom-made strategy for each country
and
you're
it
expanding
is
into.
a continent of enormous opportunity.
Okay.
Potential.
You heard it here first. All right, let's talk about the Korea Africa Center here. I hear you celebrated the first anniversary of its foundation recently. Congratulations on that. How did it come about? And tell us more about the activities that you do. I know we've heard some of them already.
Yes, the Korea Africa Center started January last year. So we are a little bit 1 year old. And in the meantime, we have it our aim to do more in-depth study of Africa, and also promote exchange and cooperation between Korea and African countries.
Yeah.
So what we did over the last 1 year is the country study of some selected major countries. We are continuing the same this year, and also we studied the issues, important issues in Africa, political, economic, and so on.
Right.
So a sector study as well. And we also printed some basic data on Africa.
Okay.
For example, any African, Africanist scholar or student need the basic data on Africa. So we did that. And we organized cultural events to familiarize Korean public with Africa.
Right.
And also we organized the Model African Union Conference, like
Okay.
they do in Model United Nations.
Right.
We brought together Korean college students to learn about Africa countries they represent on the issue given to them. So we are doing it again this year, but to more international way.
Okay.
I mean, internationalized seminar, inviting the scholars from Africa, from United States, and others, Japan and China. So we want to see the example of the China and Japan,
Yeah.
how they proceed with cooperation with Africa. So and hearing out what they are doing, we just want to check what we are doing. So that kind of that is the theme of this year's economic conference.
Okay. So lots and lots of things going on.
Yes, there are so many things to do.
Yeah.
Because so far we don't have, such organization like ours that deals with Africa in a more comprehensive way.
Indeed.
So that makes us interested in many things and many challenges here and there.
Okay. And last but not least, you've been a diplomat, or you were a diplomat for many years. You're now the director of the Korea Africa Center. Do you have any words of advice, perhaps, for Korean enterprises wishing to expand into the African markets, or just our younger viewers in general?
Yes, Africa is. It is about time to look at Africa in different perspective, and the misconception of Africa should be. We have to get rid of.
Yeah.
And there are many things that are happening that justifies our new view, and. Some people say there are 1 million Chinese in Africa already.
Right, wow.
And they are doing business in all parts of African continent. But we are not particularly competing with China. But maybe we benefit from what they build, infrastructure and so on. But we have our own advantage as a middle-sized country.
Yeah.
And the African countries shouldn't be too much guard against our activism. And also we have economic development experience, which most African countries want to learn from. And also we have the young Koreans who do volunteer work as a part of a KOICA program, and missionaries and other NGOs. So that they also become a great asset for forming great relations with Africa. So my suggestion is let's see Africa in a new way, and also make the best use of what we have to develop relations with Africa, business also.
All right. Well, I think you've helped both myself and our viewers to see Africa in a new way. I think you've gotten rid of many misconceptions that we might have. It's been really interesting to learn about what's going on in Africa and between Africa and Korea, and it'll be really interesting to see where our relationship goes from here, how we can help Africa to expand and help them stand on their own 2 feet. And I know you guys at the Korea Africa Center are doing a great job in helping them to do that. So.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the interview today. It's been fantastic to have you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.